Welcome to Michael Potts F1, everything Formula 1, but from a photographer's point of view. Round 15, the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. Max Verstappen sent the Orange Army into raptures with a flag-to-pole win at the Dutch Grand Prix. I'm going to do the order of this review a little bit differently than usual. The first photograph I'm going to show you is actually from the team celebration at the end of the race. So we're going to start at the back and work our way forward. Here is the Red Bull team celebrating Max Verstappen's victory at the Dutch Grand Prix. Red Bull's tradition is that the team spray Red Bull on each other rather than champagne that Ferrari or Mercedes would use. It's kind of funny, but also kind of annoying because Red Bull is super sticky, and when it gets on your lenses and your camera, it's impossible to get off. The team generally line up for their photograph. Christian Horner asks if they can take 3 photographs. Invariably, after the first one, somebody's already opened a can and is spraying it around, and then pandemonium breaks loose and everyone tries to run to avoid it. So that's why in this shot you see Max running away. There's drinks being sprayed in the background. It's always quite a funny moment in the race weekend, quite a joyous celebration. And it's particularly nice here because they've done it on the main straight, and behind them are a lot of fans. If you happen to attend a motor race and your favourite driver wins, it's really worth sticking around to see if you can see the team celebration. They don't always take place on the start-finish straight, but quite often they do, and it's just a nice moment to share with the team. Max was completely dominant this weekend. He had a few car troubles in the first practice, but after that he was the fastest in qualifying and he led from start to finish. There were some slightly worrying moments for him when Valtteri Bottas stopped his car on the start-finish straight. That produced a safety car, and when the safety car came out, Max was actually second to Lewis, but it didn't take him very long to overtake once racing resumed. Probably the biggest surprise of the weekend was how strong Mercedes was compared to Ferrari. There were points where Lewis looked like he could actually give a decent challenge to Max, but I think Max always had the race in control. Max is now over 100 points ahead of Charles. That means out of the 7 remaining races, Max doesn't even need to finish 4 of them, and he'll still be leading the championship. This is one of Max's many home races, but probably the most homely of home races. I did see 1 or 2 Mercedes flags, but the vast majority of supporters were Max Verstappen supporters. And to avoid being swamped by crowds, he was being driven around in this little buggy. This is one of the few races that Max actually has security. It's unusual for Max. We're used to seeing Lewis having security. He's had security for a few years now. But probably what was more unusual was seeing Max arrive to the circuit with a police escort. I'm not sure if that was for his own protection or help him get through the small streets of Zandvoort a lot quicker. This race has a split paddock. This is because there's not much space available to teams. So they have one part of the paddock which is the garages and the engineering teams, and they have a separate part which is hospitality. Walking through the garage section of the paddock on Thursday afternoon, I came across a very unusual sight. It was scorching hot, and there in front of me was Lando Norris without his shirt on. He was doing a photo shoot with his media team for some merchandise that's going to come out after the American Grand Prix. One thing I like about this shot is that his media team is clearly appreciative of the outfit change. Norris is recently single after ending his 8-month relationship with Lucina Oliveira. Apart from a semi-naked Lando Norris, the best part of the race weekend are the exceptionally passionate Dutch fans. They create a wonderful atmosphere, all dressed in orange. It's an amazing spectacle to see. Last year's event had a lot of flares, but these largely have been banned. A couple of people managed to sneak some in, and one of the sessions was actually delayed because a flare had made its way onto the track. I spent a bit of time going through the fan zones, photographing people. It was great to see how much effort people had gone to enjoy this event. This sea of orange gives a great backdrop to work with photographically. This is a shot of Carlos Sainz at the end of the second practice session, going through the stadium section. There's a bit where you can get wonderfully close to the cars, and you can see the crowd in the background. I've taken this at a 30th of a second. This blurs the background and gives you a lot of movement. The late afternoon light gives you a great warm effect to the photograph. This shot of Yuki Tsunoda is taken down the main straight. There's a fence between myself and the car, but shooting at a slow shutter speed helps me make that disappear a bit. This shot might have actually been improved if I'd gone for even slower shutter speed. This shot of Max exiting turn 3 is also using the crowd, but in a slightly different way. Here I've shot with a faster shutter speed and a shallower depth of field, blurring the crowd out and focusing on the car. It's a great angle and it makes the car look like it's traveling very fast. This shot shows another unique aspect of the Zandvoort track, the extreme banking. Generally speaking, the Netherlands are flat. exceptionally flat. But back in 1948, somebody devised a racetrack in the dunes around the coastal town of Zandvoort. They used roads built by the Nazi occupiers from World War II. The dunes give you a lot of undulation. There are two extremely steep banked corners, turn 3 and the final corner. You don't really get an idea about how steep they are on TV, but it is extreme. You've almost got to think of this track as a slippy slide in a water park. Here is an image I took last year of Lando Norris doing the grid walk with his engineers. Look at their feet and you can see how steep the banking is. Being so steep, the banking can cause sparks from the underside of the car. Here's a photograph of Daniel Ricciardo going through turn 3, and you can see the floor of his car is grinding on the tarmac. To spice things up a bit, the FIA had a DRS zone on the final banked corner of the lap. This allowed drivers to open up the flap on the rear wing of the car, reducing the downforce and increasing the speed. It must have been terrifying to all of a sudden have less grip when flying around the bank corner at high speed in a Formula 1 car. Here on Alex Albon's car, you can see the rear flap is fully opened as he completes the lap. Albon got his car into the second part of qualifying, and he'll be starting the race from 15th on the grid. I shot the start of the race just after turn 3, once the cars have come out of the banking. I was expecting a lot of drama at this corner, because the cars are coming out of this extreme bank section and they'll be jostling for position, and anything could have happened. Thankfully, all the drivers were remarkably well behaved. There were Dutch treats on offer for us in the paddock, fresh stroopwafels made for us, which were delicious. They consist of 2 waffly biscuits, very, very buttery, joined together by caramel. I thoroughly recommend these when they've been freshly baked. Even the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayman, got into the Dutch spirit. Here he is, riding an Omar Fiets, or grandmother bicycle. I travel by train every day to the track. It's about 20 minutes from Amsterdam Central Station. It's definitely the best way to travel. Driving options are seriously limited, unless you have Max Verstappen's police escort. It is possible for us media to drive to the track, but the car park they provided is very, very far away from the circuit. If you are coming to this race, I would strongly recommend staying in either Amsterdam or in Haarlem and taking the train in each morning. There were a couple of issues in the evening, but the Dutch NS rail service sorted them out very efficiently. Public transport for this race worked incredibly well. There's a lot that places like Monaco or Barcelona could learn from the Dutch. Lewis was a little bit subdued in his fashion choices this weekend, compared to what he was wearing in Spa. It's definitely a lot tamer. Instead, it was George Russell who stole the fashion show, arriving in this brilliant cricket-inspired outfit by Tommy Hilfiger. It's rare to see Russell not wearing the team kit, and I hope this is the start of a new trend. I've never seen Max in anything other than a Red Bull shirt. I don't think I have a single photograph of him in anything else other than Red Bull branded clothing. However, he does show a bit of his personality with a splash of individualism in his race uniform. Have a look at these golden driving shoes that he wears. He's definitely the man with the Midas feet. He did have a unique one-off helmet design for this weekend. It was a nod to his father's helmet design. Here he is celebrating just after setting the fastest lap in qualifying. His father Jos raced for 9 seasons in Formula 1, and until Max arrived, Jos was the most successful Dutch driver of all time. He scored 2 podiums with Benetton in his first season in Formula 1, but never managed to get a win. After the race, Max joked that it was really nice to see his father's helmet finally getting a win. Talking of one-offs, McLaren changed their livery slightly for this race. They had the words love emblazoned down the side of their car. This is intended to be a message of positivity. It was taking the place of usual pod sponsor Velo. Velo is actually a company that makes nicotine pouches, and they're owned by British American Tobacco. This kind of shows that the cigarette companies are still heavily involved in Formula 1. So rather than being a spontaneous message of love, this is probably more of a necessity, the team having to change the branding because the Dutch laws on nicotine advertising are quite strict. Talking of cunning advertising, in this shot of Fernando Alonso arriving, you can see 3 massive posters on the side of the hotel next to the track, promoting the Grand Tour and featuring Jeremy Clarkson. With Netflix Drive to Survive being such a hit, it was a clever way to raise awareness for Amazon's own car show. One of the nice things about shooting at one of the older classic tracks is you have these old-style barriers that you can shoot through. I got this shot of Kevin Magnussen just as he was about to go into the stadium section. I'm shooting with a very fast shutter speed here because it's very difficult to pan in this situation. Going through the fence lets you shoot a lot lower down than normal. It creates a different feel to the photograph and gives you something quite unique. It's not the most dignified form of photography, as you can see in this photograph captured by fellow photographer Jay Harino of me taking that shot of Kevin Magnussen. Jamie Chadwick was at the paddock this weekend. She's the W Series defending champion. The W Series doesn't have a race this weekend, but she was here in a role as Williams' development driver. Jamie's been sublime in W Series this year. Out of the 6 races, she's won 5 of them and finished second in the other one. It's really time that she makes a step up to Formula 2 or Formula 3. She's completely outclassing her rivals in the W Series, and I just hope that she gets the funding to make that next step up. I really hope as part of her development driver role, Williams give her some time in a Formula One car. It'll be great to see what she can do. There are a few photographs of George Russell that I'd like to share with you. George did incredibly well this weekend, finishing second, which is his best result of the season. The first shot is of him staying next to the Mercedes logo in the paddock. It's a bit of a lucky shot. I think he was there doing a photo shoot with another photographer, but I quite like this angle. It's sort of relaxed, but also slightly posed. The next two are taken quite closely together. The first is of him climbing into his car. His hands are still on his halo as he leverages himself into the car. I particularly like his eye in this shot. George was only the 6th fastest qualifying, so to come from that position in the grid up to second is quite remarkable. The second shot is taken a few minutes later when he's sitting in his car. I've managed to get really low down here and taken the shot at eye level. He's got very strong blue eyes and they really sparkle in this photograph. The secret to George's success in this race was a pit stop call that he made under the safety car. He asked if he could come in and change his tyres to the faster soft tyres. This allowed him to be much more aggressive at the restart, charging through the field and overtaking his teammate for second place. It wasn't a great weekend for Ferrari. They just looked a bit off the pace. Charles started second, but slowly drifted away from Max and was overtaken by the Mercedes. However, it was Carlos that had most of the bad luck this weekend. The worst moment was probably when he only had 3 tyres available for his pit stop. The next race is at Monza in Italy, Ferrari's home race. There's going to be so much pressure. The team has to get it right. Thank you for watching my review of the Dutch Grand Prix. I really hope you've enjoyed it. It's slightly out of sequence. I ran out of time during the triple header and I couldn't get this video out last week, but I hope you've enjoyed looking back at this fascinating race. Until next time, thank you so much. Goodbye.